Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Western Canon Challenge, where we are reading the entirety of the Western literary canon out loud. Today we are setting sail on a vast sea, the journals of Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it's a titanic undertaking. And yes, just like the Titanic, I hope we don't go down in a blaze of glory and infamy because what I'm about to undertake here is really a titanic undertaking. It is a vast collection, multiple volumes, I think over 10 volumes, and I'm going to try to read all of them. Not try, I'm going to do it. The edition that I'm reading from is not the most recent academically rigorous one. It is the one that is in the public domain, and it has annotations, and it's edited by Edward Waldo Emerson and Waldo Emerson Forbes. And volume 1 is from 1820 to 1824. Emerson is a very young man here, I believe maybe even in his late teens, and he is starting off his life in his adult life in college. And that's where we pick up the journals here. And they, because they contain annotations, they will often give us a little bit of a picture into what Emerson was doing, where he was in the world, who he was with, and I think that's helpful. It's not necessarily what Emerson wrote, but it gives us context. Another thing is that within the journals themselves, even within specific journal entries, Emerson will change subjects abruptly. So, for instance, he might be talking about Faust and Germany or something like that, and then suddenly he's talking about gardening. That's not a real life example, but it's an hypothetical, and it happens quite a bit in the journals. And I thought about a way of trying to indicate that he's about to change subjects by maybe a clicking noise or a ding. But as I started scanning these journals, I realized this whole thing would be filled with dings and clicks all the time. So what I'm going to do is simply pause, and then I'll read, maybe a longer pause than usual, then I'll read, and hopefully that's sufficient. I believe it will be. And one last thing is, because of the immensity of what I'm reading here, I can't sit down and read through everything beforehand and make like narration notes and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to read at a more methodical pace than I did in the essays. I feel like I read a little too fast in those. I'm going to try to slow down here. And that's mostly because I'm going to really avoid editing every little mistake that I made, every hesitation, because like I said, with the dings and the clicks, I will never get to the end of this if I start doing all that stuff. So I will slow down if I suddenly mispronounce a name or bungle a sentence. I'll either start the sentence again, say, sorry, let me try that again, or I'll just keep going. So forgive that, those of you that will ever listen to this. Hopefully, you will just forgive that based on what we're trying to do here. I'd love to recommend professional narration of this, but I can't find any. And frankly, I don't. It would cost a fortune, I think, to buy the complete audio of Emerson's journals. I can't even imagine to how much that would cost, and I certainly don't know of anyone that has recorded it for free on YouTube. So I feel like maybe I'm doing something slightly historic here by recording these at least for free. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start reading. It starts in 1820. Emerson's a young man, and it starts off with an annotation. For those of you that are sick of all this preamble, I will put a timestamp so you can skip ahead if you ever want to start listening to it again. You can skip all the explanatory stuff and all the mumbles and all that stuff and get right to the first entry, which is going to start right now. And here we go. Journal 1, number 17, 1820. Annotation. This quote-unquote blotting book, rather than journal, simply marked number 17, showing that it had predecessors, though these are gone, was begun almost with the year 1820. Emerson was then a junior, living in Hollis Hall, number 15. A rude but faithful little picture in watercolors of that room, apparently done by him, is found in the quote, wide world in quote, number 1. Its bare floor, uncurtained window, cheap paper, and Spartan furniture fairly represent the brave simplicity of those days. The pictures are probably such engravings of eminent divines as could be spared from home. George Whitefield, Dr. Samuel Cooper, Reverend Charles Chauncey, or other lights of that ministry for which the boy was already destined. His chum was John Gaillard Keith Godine, yet strangely no mention of him occurs in the jottings of that year. Dr. Holmes, in his memoir of Emerson, says, quote, "The two Godines, Robert and John Gaillard Keith, were dashing young fellows, as I recollect them, belonging to Charleston, South Carolina. The quote-unquote Southerners were reigning college elegans of that time, the Mervelots, the Mirflores of their day. Their swallowtail coats, tapered to an arrow-point angle, and the prints of their little delicate calfskin boots in the snow were objects of great admiration to the village boys of the period. I cannot help but wondering what brought Emerson and the showy, fascinating John Godine together as roommates." End quote. Emerson was writing a dissertation on the character of Socrates, for which he received a Bodine Prize. This, with a later prize dissertation, quote, "on the present state of ethical culture," end quote, were recently printed with a sketch of Emerson's life by Dr. Edward Everett Hale in a small volume published in Boston by the Unitarian Association. For the latter essay, Emerson only received the second prize. His classmate, John Quincy, won the first. The book is full of miscellaneous scraps of prose and verse written by the boy, and also quoted from a variety of sources given below. Many lines from Shakespeare, Byron, Scott, Dryden, and Moore, classified by the initial letter, are stored away there for use in a game, now becoming obsolete, called capping verses. The following passage from a study for the paper on Socrates, together with some phrases poetical, which the young author stored to adorn his sentences or enlarge his vocabulary, and a song for a club festival, are all that seem worthwhile to print. January 1820, age 16. The ostentatious ritual of India, which worshipped God by outraging nature, though softened as it proceeded west, was still too harsh a discipline for Athenian manners to undergo. Socrates had little to do with these, and perhaps his information on the subject was very limited. He was not distinguished for knowledge or general information, but for acquaintance with the mind and its faults and fond propensities, its springs of action, its assailable parts. In short, his art laid open its deepest recesses, and he handled it and molded it at will. Indeed, we do not have reason to suppose that he was intimately versed in his own national literature, Herodotus, Homer, Thucydides, Pindar, etc. His profession in early life had perhaps imparted a little of poetic inspiration, but this leading feature seems to have been sagacity, little refinement, little erudition. His genius resembled Aesop. The greatness of the philosopher shines forth in its fullest luster when we examine the originality, the bold and unequaled sublimity of his conceptions. His powerful mind had surmounted the errors of education and had retained useful acquisitions, whilst it discarded what was absurd or unprofitable. He studied nature with chastised enthusiasm, and the constant activity of his mind endowed him with an energy of thought little short of inspiration. When he speaks of the immortality of the soul, or when he enters on considerations of the attributes or nature of the deity, he leaves the little quibblings of the sophists and his own inferior strains of irony, and his soul warms and expands with this subject. We forget that he is man. He seems seated like Jupiter creator, molding magnificent forms and clothing them with beauty and grandeur. "What is God?" said the disciples, and Plato replied, it is hard to learn and impossible to divulge. In Athens, learning was not loved for its own sake, but for sinister ends. It was prized as a saleable commodity. The sophists bargained their literature, such as it was, for a price, which, always exorbitant, was regulated by the ability of the disciple. And this must always happen, more or less, in the infancy of letters. In a money-making community, literature will soon thrive. It must always follow, not precede, successful trade. The first wants to be supplied are the native ones of animal subsistence and comfort, and when these are more than provided for, and luxury and ease begin to look about them for new gratification, the mind then urges its claim to cultivation. Journal 2, The Wide World, Number 1, 1820. Annotation. The journals from February 1820 to July 1824 bear the name The Wide World, and extracts from all of these are given here, excepting number 6, which is missing. February 1820. Mixing with the thousand pursuits and passions and objects of the world, as personified by imagination, is profitable and entertaining. These pages are intended at their commencement to contain a record of new thoughts when they occur. For a receptacle of all old ideas that partial but peculiar peeping at antiquity can furnish or furbish. For a tablet to save the wear and tear of weak memory, and in short, for all the various purposes and utility, real or imaginary, which are usually comprehended under that comprehensive title, Commonplace Book. O ye witches, assist me, enliven or horrify some midnight lucubration or dream, whichever may be found most convenient, to supply this reservoir when other resources fail. Pardon me, fairyland, rich region of fancy and gnomery, elvery, sylphery, and Queen Mab. Pardon me for presenting my first petition to your enemies, but there is probably one in the chamber who maliciously influenced me to what is irrevocable. Pardon and favor me. And finally, spirits of earth, air, fire, water, wherever ye glow, whatsoever you patronize, whoever you inspire, hallow this devoted paper. Dedicated and signed January 25th, 1820, Junio. After such a dedication, what so proper to begin with a reflection on or from Edward's search? It is a fine idea which he either intends to convey, or else the form of expression unintentionally did, pray let us believe the latter for the credit of originality, that those parts of the world which man cannot or does not inhabit are the abodes of other orders of sentient being, invisible or unperceived by him. To amplify, perhaps the inferior center of the earth, the bottomless depths and the upper paths of ocean, the lands circumjacent to the poles, the high rock and clefts of the rock, are peopled by higher beings than ourselves, animals cast in more refined mold, not subject to the inconveniences, woes, etc. of our species, to whom, as to us, this world appears made only for them, and among whom our very honest and honorable species are classed only as the highest order of brutes, perhaps called the bee kind. When imagination has formed this class of beings and has given them the name of superminds, it will be perfectly convenient to rise again to an order higher than these last, holding our self-complacent friends, the superminds, in as utter contempt as they us, or as we the beasts, and then she may rise to another and another, till, for aught I know, she may make this world one of the mansions of heaven, and in parts of it, though in and around, yet thoroughly unknown to us, the seraphim and cherubim may live and enjoy. I have now already fallen into an error, which may be a very common one, to hunt an idea down, when obtained, in such a remorseless manner as to render dull and flat an idea originally plump, round, and shining. Perhaps our system and all the planets, stars we can discover nay, the whole interminable universe, is moving on, as has been supposed, in one grand circle round the center of light, and since the world began it has never completed a single revolution. It is an improvement on the grandeur of this supposition to suppose there is a source of light before us, and the whole vast machinery has been forever and is now sweeping forward in a direct line through the interminable fields, extensions of space. It is a singular fact that we cannot present to the imagination a longer space than just so much of the world as is bounded by the visible horizon, so that even in this stretching of thought to comprehend the broad path lengthening itself and widening to receive the rolling universe, stern necessity bounds us to a little extent of a few miles only. But what matters it? We can talk and write and think it out. Chateaubriand's, quote, "The universe is the imagination of the deity made manifest," end quote, is worthy of him. Quote, "Mount on thy own path to fame, nor swerve for man or more than man," says Caswallon in Seymour, and it will be a fine motto by striking out the last four words. Independence, pulpit eloquence. Let us suppose a pulpit orator to whom the path of his profession is yet untried, but whose talents are good and feelings strong, and his independence as a man in opinion and in action is established. Let him ascend to the pulpit for the first time, not to please or displease the multitude, but to expound to them the words of the book, and to waft their minds and devotions to heaven. Let him come to them in a solemnity and strength, and when he speaks, he will claim attention with an interesting figure and an interested face. To expand their views of the sublime doctrines of the religion, he may embrace the universe and bring down the stars from their courses to do homage to their Creator. Here is a fountain which cannot fail them. Wise Christian orators have often and profitably magnified the inconceivable power of the Creator as manifested in his works, and thus elevated and sobered the mind of the people, and gradually drawn them off from the world they have left by the animating ideas of majesty, beauty, wonder, which these considerations bestow. Then, when life in its frivolities is fastly flowing away from before them, and the spirit is absorbed in the play of its mightiest energies, and their eyes are on him, and their hearts are in heaven, then let him discharge his fearful duty, then let him unfold the stupendous designs of celestial wisdom, and whilst admiration is speechless, let him minister to their unearthly wants, and let the ambassador of the Most High prove himself worthy of his tremendous vocation. Let him gain the tremendous eloquence which stirs men's souls, which turn the world upside down, but which loses all its filth and retains all its grandeur when consecrated to God. When a congregation are assembled together to hear such an apostle, you may look round and you will see the faces of men bent forward in earnestness of expectation. And in this desirable frame of mind, the preacher may lead them whithersoever he will. They have yielded up their prejudices to the eloquence of the lips which the archangel hath purified and hallowed with fire, and this first sacrifice is the sin offering which cleanses them. Webster, February 7th. Mr. K., a lawyer of Boston, gave me a fine character of a distinguished individual in private conversation, which in part I shall set down. Quote, "Webster is a rather large man, about 5 feet 7 or 9 in height, and 39 or 40 years old. He has a long head, very large black eyes, bushy eyebrows, a commanding expression, and his hair is coal black and coarse as a crow's nest. His voice is sepulchral. There is not the least variety or the least harmony of tone. It commands, it fills, it echoes, but is harsh and discordant. He possesses an admirable readiness, a fine memory, and a faculty of perfect abstraction, an unparalleled impudence, and a tremendous power of concentration. He brings all that he has ever heard, read, or seen to bear on the case in question. He growls along the bar to see who will run, and if nobody runs, he will fight. He knows his strength, has a perfect confidence in his own powers, and is distinguished by a spirit of fixed determination. He marks his path out and will cut off 50 heads rather than turn out of it, but is generous and free from malice and will never move a step to make a severe remark. His genius is such that if he descends to be pathetic, he becomes ridiculous. He has no wit and never laughs, though he is very shrewd and sarcastic, and sometimes sets the whole court in a roar by the singularity or pointedness of a remark. His imagination is what the light of a furnace is to its heat, a necessary attendant, nothing sparkling or agreeable, but dreadful and gloomy. This is the finest character I have ever heard portrayed, and very truly drawn with little or no exaggeration. With respect to the cause of a town's condition of bad society, he said, well, quote, "There is stuff to make a good society, but they are discordant atoms," end quote. And regarding the contrasting and comparing the worthy and great dead, quote, "You may not tell a man your neighbor's house is higher than yours, but you may measure gravestones and see which is the tallest." End quote. Cambridge, March 11th, 1820. Thus long I have been in Cambridge this term, 3 or 4 weeks, and have not before this moment paid my devoirs to the gnomes to whom I dedicate this quaint and heterogeneous manuscript. Is it because matter has been wanting? No. I have written much elsewhere in prose, poetry, and miscellany. Let me put the most favorable construction on the case and say that I have been better employed. Beside considerable attention, however unsuccessful, to college studies, I have finished Bissett's Life of Burke, as well as Burke's Regicide Peace, together with considerable variety of desultory reading. Generally speaking, highly entertaining and instructive. The Pythologian poem does not proceed very rapidly, though I have experienced some poetic moments. Could I seat myself in the alcove of one of those public libraries which human pride and literary rivalship have made costly, splendid, and magnificent, it would indeed be an enviable situation. I would plunge into the classic lore of chivalrous story and of the fairyland bards, and unclosing the ponderous volumes of the firmest believers in magic and in the potency of consecrated crozier or elfin ring, I would let my soul sail away delighted into their wildest fantasies. Pendragon is rising before my fancy, and has given me permission to wander in his walks of fairyland, and to present myself at the bower of Gloriana. I stand in the fair assembly of the chosen, the brave, and the beautiful. Honor and virtue, courage and delicacy are mingling in magnificent joy. Unstained knighthood is sheathing the successful blade in the presence of unstained chastity, and the festal jubilee of fairyland is announced by the tinkling of its silver bells. The halls are full of gorgeous splendor, and the groves are joyous with light and beauty. The birds partake and magnify the happiness of the greenwood shades, and the music of the harp comes swelling on the gay breezes. Or other views more real, scarcely less beautiful, should attract and chain me. All the stores of Grecian and Roman literature may be unlocked and fully displayed, or with the Indian enchanters send my soul up to wander among the stars till, quote, "the twilight of the gods," end quote. April 2nd. Spring has returned and has begun to unfold her beautiful array, to throw herself on wildflower couches, to walk abroad on the hills and summon her songsters to do her sweet homage. The muses have issued from the library and costly winter dwelling of their votaries, and are gone up to build their bowers on Parnassus, and to melt their ice-bound fountains. Castalia is flowing rapturously and lifting her foam on high. The hunter and the shepherd are abroad on the rock, and the valleys echo to the merry, merry horn. The poet, of course, is wandering while nature's thousand melodies are warbling to him. This soft, bewitching luxury of vernal gales and accompanying beauty overwhelms. It produces a lassitude which is full of mental enjoyment and which we would not exchange for more vigorous pleasure. Although so long as the spell endures, little or nothing is accomplished. Nevertheless, I believe it operates to divest the mind of old and worn out contemplations, and bestows new freshness upon life, and leaves behind its imaginations of enchantment for the mind to mold into splendid forms and gorgeous fancies which shall long continue to fascinate after the physical phenomena which woke them have ceased to create delight. April 4th. Judging from the opportunity enjoyed, I ought to have this evening a flow of thought, rich, abundant, and deep. After having heard Mr. Everett deliver his introductory lecture, in length 1½ hour, having read much and profitably in the Quarterly Review, and lastly having heard Dr. Warren's introductory lecture to anatomy, all in the compass of a day, and in the mind possessing a temperament well adapted to receive the calm attention what was offered, shall endeavor to record promiscuously received ideas, though the literature of Greece gives us sufficient information with regard to later periods of their commonwealth, as we go back before the light of tradition comes and the veil drops. All tends to the mysterious East. From the time of the first dispersion of the human family to the time of Grecian rise, everything in the history of man is obscure, and we think ourselves sufficiently fortunate if we can write in broad lines the fate of a dynasty, though we know nothing of the individuals who composed it. The cause is this inefficiency and uncertainty of tradition in those early and ignorant times when the whole history of a tribe was lodged in the head of its patriarch, and in his death their history was lost. But even after the invention of letters, much, very much, has never reached us. This we need not regret. What was worth knowing was transmitted to posterity, the rest buried in deserved forgetfulness. Everything was handed down which ought to be handed down. The Phoenicians gave the Greeks their alphabet, yet not a line of all which they wrote has come down, while their pupils have built themselves an imperishable monument of fame. I here make a resolution to make myself acquainted with the Greek language and antiquities and history with long and serious attention and study, always with the assistance of circumstances. To which end I hereby dedicate and devote to the down-putting of sentences quoted or original which regard Greece, historical, poetical, and critical, page 47 of this time-honored register. By the way, I devote page 45 to the notation of inquirienda and of books to be sought. Signed, Junio. April 30th. Ethereal beings to whom I dedicated the pages of my wide world, do not, I entreat you, neglect it. When I sleep, waken me. When I weary, animate. Wander after moonbeams, fairies, but bring them home here. Indeed, you cannot imagine how it would gratify me to wake up from an accursed Enfield lesson and find a page written in characters of light by a moonbeam of Queen Mab. I will give you a subject, 1,000 if you wish. For instance, Pendragon, your own Pendragon. Record his life and his glories. Prince Arthur, if it is not too trite, or the universe, or a broomstick. Either or all of these, or 50,000 more. June 7th. A very singular chance led me to derive very sensible answers to the two questions I proposed to Virgil. For the first I opened to the line, O crudelus Alexi, nihil mea carmina curas. For the other I opened to a line, Dryden's translation of which is, Go, let the gods and temples claim thy care. Have been of late reading patches of Barrow and Ben Jonson, and what the object, no, not curiosity, no, nor expectation of edification intellectual or moral, but merely because they are authors where vigorous phrases and quaint, peculiar words and expressions may be sought and found, the better to rattle out the battle of my thoughts. I shall now set myself to give a good sentence of Barrow's, the whole beauty of which he has impaired by a blundering collocation, in purer and more fashionable English. Obvious manifestations may be sometimes seen of the ruling government of God. Sometimes in the career of a triumphant guilt, when things have come to such a pass that iniquity and outrage do exceedingly prevail, so that the life of the offender becomes intolerably grievous, a change comes upon the state of things, however stable and enduring in appearance, a revolution in a matter sudden and strange, and flowing from causes mean and unworthy, which overturneth the towering fabric of fortune and reduces its gigantic dimensions. And no strugglings of might, no fetches of policy, no circumspection or industry of man availing to uphold it. There is outstretched an invisible hand checking all such force and crossing all such devices, a stone cut out of the mountain without hands, and breaking to pieces the iron and the brass and the clay and the silver and the gold. In looking over the sentence, however, though the grand outline of the whole was originally the Reverend Isaac Barrow's, yet we very self-complacently confess that great alterations have rendered it editorially Mr. Ralph Emerson's, and I intend to make use of it hereafter, after another new modeling, for it is still very susceptible of improvement. June 19th. When those magnificent masses of vapor which load our horizon are breaking away, disclosing fields of blue atmosphere, there is an exhilaration awakened in the system of a susceptible man which so invigorates the energies of mind and displays to himself such manifold power and joy superior to other existences, that he will triumph and exult that he is a man. We feel at these times that eternal analogy which subsists between the external changes of nature and scenes of good and ill that chequer human life. Joy cometh, but is speedily supplanted by grief, and we look at the approach of transient verities like the mists of the morning, fearful and many, but the fairies are in them and white ladies beckoning. August 8th. I have been reading the Novum Organum. Lord Bacon is indeed a wonderful writer. He condenses an unrivaled degree of matter in one paragraph. He never suffers himself to swerve from the direct forthright, or to babble or speak unguardedly on his proper topic, and withal writes with more melody and rich cadence than any writer, I had almost said of England, on a similar subject. Although I have quoted in my Universe of Composition, by which presumptuous term I beg leave to remind myself that nothing was meant but to express wideness and variety of range, yet I will add here a fine little sentence from the 30th section of the second volume of the Novum Organum. Speaking of bodies composed of two different species of things, he says, "But these instances may be reckoned of the singular or heteroclite kind, as being rare and extraordinary in the universe, yet for their dignity they ought to be separately placed and treated, for they excellently indicate the composition and structure of things, and suggest the cause of the number of the ordinary species of the universe, and lead the understanding from that which is to that which may be." There is nothing in this sentence which should cause it to be quoted more often than another. It does not stand out from the rest, but it struck me accidentally as a very different sentence from those we similarly constructed in ordinary writers. For instance, in the last three clauses beginning, "for they excellently," it is common to see an author construct a fine sentence in this way, with idle repetitions of the same idea, embellished a little for the sake of shrouding the deception. In this they all convey ideas determinate, but widely different, and all beautiful and intelligent. But, says Sterne, the cant of criticism is the most provoking. There is a strange face in the freshman class, whom I should like to know very much. He has a great deal of character in his features and should be a fast friend or bitter enemy. His name is, and it's left blank. I shall endeavor to become acquainted with him and wish, if possible, that I might be able to recall at a future period the singular sensations which his presence produced at this. When we see an exquisite specimen of painting, whence does the pleasure we experience arise? From the resemblance. It is immediately answered to the works of nature. It is granted that this is in part the cause, but it can't explain the whole pleasure we enjoy, for we see more perfect resemblances, as a stone, apple, or fruit, without this pleasure. No, it arises from the power which we immediately recollect to be necessary to the creation of the painting. August 21st. In the Harvard College Athenaeum, I enjoyed a very pleasant hour reading the Life of Marlborough and the Quarterly Review. I was a little troubled there by vexatious trains of thought, but once found myself stopping entirely from my reading and occupied in throwing guesses into futurity while I was asking myself if, when, 10 or a dozen years hence, I am gone far on the bitter, perplexing roads of life, when I shall then recollect these moments, now thought so miserable, shall I not fervently wish the possibility of their return, and to find myself again thrown awkwardly on the tilted chair in the Athenaeum, study with my book in my hand, the snuffers and lamps and shelves around, and Mott coughing over his newspaper near me, and ready myself to saunter out into gaiety and commons when that variously meaning bell shall lift up his tongue. Emerson adds a Latin phrase of which there is no translation here. August 23rd, 1820. Tomorrow finishes the junior year. As it is time to close our accounts, we will conclude likewise this book, which we have been formed from the meditations and fancies which have sprinkled the miscellany corner of my mind for 2 terms past. It was begun in the winter vacation. I think it has been an improving employment decidedly. It has not encroached upon other occupations, and has afforded seasonable aid at various times to enlarge or enliven scanty themes, etc., nor has it monopolized the energies of composition for literary exercises. Whilst I have written in it, I have begun and completed my Pythologian poem of 260 lines, and my dissertation on the character of Socrates. It has prevented the ennui of many an idle moment, and has perhaps enriched my stock of language for future exertions. Much of it has been written with a view to their preservation, as hints for a peculiar pursuit at the distance of years. Little or none of it was elaborate. Its office was to be a hasty, sketchy composition containing at times elements of grave order. So fare ye well, gay powers and princedoms. To you the sheets were inscribed. Light thanks you for tutelary smiles. Grim witches from Valhalla and courteous dames from fairyland, whose protection was implored and whose dreams were invoked to furnish forth the scroll, adieu to you all. You have the laughing poet's benison and malison, his wish and his forgetfulness. Abandoning your allegiance, he throws you to the winds, recklessly defying your malice and fun. Pinch the red nose, lead him astray after will-o'-the-wisp over wilderness and fen, fright him with ghastly hobgoblins, wreak your vengeance as you will. He gives you free leave on this sole condition, if you can. Junio. August 24th, 1820. Books to be sought. Wordsworth's Recluse, Quarterly Review, September 1819. Liber 8 of Buchanan's Scotland, Wallace, Spencer's View of the State of Ireland, Camden's Annals of Queen Elizabeth, Kennett's Life and Character of Greek Poets, Hodie de Illustribus Gracius, Middleton's Cicero, Burton's Melancholy, Barrow's Sermons, Hobbes' Leviathan, Joinville's Life of St. Louis, Froissart's History of England, Chaucer's Works, Bayle's Dictionary, Corinne, Messenger's Plays, Fletcher's Do, Bentley's Phalaris, Peter's Letters, Letters from Eastern States, Waverley, Cogan on the Passions, Sir Charles Grandison, Inquirenda, Extant History of the Troubadours, Pendragon, Sir Walter Raleigh's Conceit of the Faerie Queen, Valhalla, Archipelago, Paestum, Taillefer at the Battle of Hastings, Illumination Graphic, Griselda of Boccaccio, Walter Raleigh's Account of Theories of Paradise, Waterspouts. Here I'm going to read an annotation that will help illuminate this list of books and authors. A book club was organized by Emerson and some of his college friends. They subscribed for some of the English reviews and for the North American, then New. They also bought the new poems and fiction, especially Scott's novels, and often read them aloud at their meetings. Of course, most of the serious reading mentioned in the journals, while in Cambridge, was done in the college library. We go from this annotation to an editorial posting illuminating what Emerson was doing at this time. Extracts from the record of the Pythologian Society, of which Emerson was for a time secretary, 1819 to 1821. Although in the secretary's book no name is given to the society, and in the record of the meeting of June 13, 1819, the committee appointed to consider the subject reported that, quote, "It is best that the society should have no name," end quote, and that the report was accepted. It there appears that Emerson was appointed to prepare a poem for the celebration of the first anniversary of the society, and read one, as the accompanying extracts show. In the journal covering this period, however, he twice mentions the writing of his Pythologian poem. Several members of the sophomore class met at Godine's room, which is also Emerson's room, on April 24th, 1819, for the purpose of forming a society for exercise in composition and discussion. Present were Blood, Emerson, Fry, Godine. There were 2 Godines and 2 Hills brothers in the class, so it says Godine 2D, Hill 2D, followed by James, Reed, and Wood. The question whether it be expedient to form a society for this purpose was proposed and debated. Voted unanimously to form a society for these purposes, both Hills, Wood, and Emerson were chosen to prepare regulations and laws to be presented at the next meeting. They adjourned to meet at Fry's room on the 2nd of May at 7:30 p.m. Laws and regulations of the, and here it is a dash to represent their unnamed secret society. The great design of public education is to qualify men for usefulness in active life, and the principal arts by which we can be useful are those of writing and speaking. We are told by those from whose decision there is no appeal that by constant, unwearied practice only can facility and excellence in these arts be attained. We believe that societies, when well regulated and supported with spirit, are of great use towards acquiring these important qualifications. We therefore agree to form ourselves into a society for writing and extemporaneous speaking, to be called, and this is left blank. And then it continues, we engage to endeavor to promote the interests of the society and the mutual improvement of each other by freely receiving and imparting instructions, and we pledge our honor to be governed by the following laws and regulations. And there's a short annotated note here that says, the more important of these articles submitted by the committee at the meeting of May 2nd and adopted and signed by the members are here given. Article 1. The society shall consist of no more than 12 members, and no person shall be admitted without consent of every member. Then it skips to Article 4. 6 members shall read compositions at every regular meeting upon subjects given out by the society as they are called upon by the moderator, and 6 shall discuss subjects proposed at the preceding meeting, each upon the subject assigned him by the society. Article 5. 2 members shall be chosen from those who read compositions to decide the question, and in case of disagreement, the moderator shall decide it. Article 6. 4 members shall be chosen by the society to read essays before the society upon subjects of their own choice, 2 at the meeting nearest the middle of each term to perform at the meeting nearest the middle of the next term, and 2 at the end of each term to perform at the last meeting of the succeeding term. Any member neglecting or refusing to read a composition or discuss shall be fined 12 1/2 cents. For neglecting to read an essay, 50 cents. Disorderly or disrespectful conduct shall subject the offender to a fine of 6 1/4 cents. Non-attendance shall be fined 12 1/2 cents. Any member coming after the meeting shall be fined 6 1/4 cents. And here are the names listed: John Angier, Oliver Blood, Warren Burton, Ralph W. Emerson, Enoch Fry, John J. Key Godine, Joseph B. Hill, John B. Hill, Geo B. James, Benjamin T. James, I believe the former was Jeffrey B. James, followed by Benjamin T. Reed, Charles W. Upham, Nathaniel Wood, Edward Kent, Samuel H. Lyon, John M. Cheney. October 25th, 1819. The next meeting being that of the essays, a committee of 3 were chosen to provide for the evening: Blood, Godine, and Lyon. It was found necessary by the society to have a particular sum of money agreed on to be expended essay evenings. Accordingly, it was voted that $2 should be the sum, that what the fines did not cancel should be paid by an assessment upon the members. Voted to adjourn till Monday evening 6 o'clock to Brother Godine's room, November 7th. Nathaniel Wood, Secretary. Monday evening, March 6th, 1820. Met at Brother Wood's room according to adjournment. Proceeded to confer upon admission of a new member, Vice Upham. Cheney was nominated and elected, and Brother Wood appointed to inform him and invite him to join. Proceeded to the reading of themes. Brothers Lyon and Godine, being absent, chose by lot as voluntary discussers, Blood vice Godine, and Wood vice Lyon. The first discussions between Kent and Fry was decided in favor of Kent by Blood and Reed, judges. After discussion, chose Brothers Kent and Hill first to appoint subjects for discussion, Brothers Wood and Burton for themes. The Committee for Discussions report. First, which is most conducive to individual happiness, a state of celibacy or matrimony? Burton and Reed. Second, whether Daddy Tracy can be justified in spending his days in Cambridge? Wood and Blood. Third, which is the strongest passion, love or ambition? The first member is blank, and then followed by Emerson's name. So the person he was debating, I guess, his name is left blank. Committee for Themes report. Envy wishes and then believes. Both reports accepted. Brother Reed requested that the fine which he had paid for non-performance of essay might be refunded, as he had been sick for 3 weeks previous to the evening on which it was due, and was then sick and out of town. Much warm debate ensuing, he withdrew the request, and it was voted that the members of the society as individuals in the situation of Brother Reed would consider an essay as due from them. Adjourned till Monday evening, a fortnight hence, to meet at 7 o'clock at Brother Emerson's room, attested by R.W. Emerson. Monday evening, March 20th, 1820. Met according to adjournment, Brother Kent in the chair. Proceeded to reading themes, then to discussion. On account of the absence of Brothers Hill first, Godine, and Lyon, it was voted that Brothers Fry and Hill second be judges of all the discussions. Question arising with regard to the expediency of choosing by lot one who should voluntarily discuss with Brother Emerson, it was voted that in the present or a similar instance the single discusser should speak alone. The judges decided the first discussion in favor of Brother Reed for celibacy. On examination of the second, the judges reported in decision, and the moderator decided for Brother Wood. After discussion, proceeded to hear Brother Wood's report as committee, who reported that Mr. Cheney will join the society with pleasure, but cannot appear till next meeting. Proceeded to committees. Brothers Blood and Burton, committee for discussion report. First, whether the accession of the Canadas to the territory of the USA would be for the best interest of this country. Fry and Hill first. Second, whether commons be honorable to the progress of college literature. Kent and Hill second. Third, whether Cicero or Demosthenes be the greatest orator. Godine and Lyon. Committee of Themes report, Futurity. Voted that the anniversary of this society, the 24th of April next, be celebrated by oration and poem. Chose Brother Kent, orator, and Brother Emerson, poet. As the next meeting is essay night, chose Brother Burton and Emerson, committee of arrangements. Adjourned by Monday evening 7 o'clock to meet at Brother Burton's room, attested by R.W. Emerson, secretary. Monday evening, April 3rd, 1820. Met, according to adjournment, Brother Lyon in the chair. Proceeded to hear Brother Hill's first essay, voted that the thanks of society be presented to Brother Hill for his elegant and ingenious performance. Brother Godine not being present, proceeded to the convivial business of the evening. Afterwards, Brother Godine appearing, on account of the lateness of the time and other considerations, it was voted that Brother Godine's essay should be read at the next ordinary meeting of the society. Appointed Brothers Hill second and Wood to be the essayists at the meeting in the middle of the next term. Adjourned till April 24th, the anniversary of the society, to meet at Brother Emerson's room to hear the oration and poem. Attested by R.W. Emerson, secretary. April 26th, 1820. Met by mistake 2 days later than the anniversary. Voted that Brother Godine be requested to read his essay this evening to the society. Proceeded to initiate Brother Cheney, then to hear the essay. Voted that the thanks of the society be presented to Brother Godine for his correct and elegant essay. Brother Blood presented Brother Kent's excuse for non-attendance, and it was voted that Brother Emerson be a committee to request Brother Kent to deliver his oration to the society at the earliest convenient opportunity. Proceeded to hear the poem. A treat was then given to the society by the liberality of Brothers Reed and Lyon. Voted that the thanks of the society be given to Brothers Reed and Lyon for their unexplained munificence. Adjourned to the fortnight from next Monday evening. Secretary R.W. Emerson. November 18th, 1820. After several unsuccessful efforts on the part of the secretary to call the society together, a few of the members, affording instance of the disinterested and self-denial which reflects the highest honor on themselves, met this evening at Brother Hill's room. After spending some time in lively conversation, a sufficient number were found present to form a quorum, and accordingly the meeting was opened, when agreeably to the object of the meeting, the essays were called for. But Brother Godine, from whom one has been some time due not appearing, his of course was omitted, as was Brother Blood's for the same reason. The essayists whose performance became due this evening were Brothers Cheney and Emerson. Brother Cheney was therefore called upon and delivered a very elegant and patriotic essay, for which the sincere thanks of the society were bestowed upon him. A mark of honor incomparably more valuable than medals, which time will tarnish and destroy, or statues which violence will deface and barbarism overthrow. Here the secretary would gladly close the record of this evening, and let the critics of posterity suppose that what he has written above is merely a fragment of what he recorded, and exercise their learning and ingenuity in supplying the deficiency, but truth and fidelity forbid. For o tempora o moris, no sooner had Brother Cheney delivered his essay and received the thanks of the society, as above recorded, than some of the members present began to express uneasiness at being any longer detained, and that, although Brother Emerson was prepared to read the essay due from him. Strange infatuation, but such was their desire to depart that it was found impossible to keep them together any longer. The meeting was therefore adjourned, attested by E. Fry, Secretary. February 26th, 1821. Wonderful to relate, within an hour of the time appointed, a large number of the members than have attended any meeting since I have had the honor to be secretary, met at number 4 Hy to hear the essays due last time, and the anniversary oration due from the time not quite immemorial, but so long that it should have been delivered almost a year ago. The meeting was then opened with Brother Kent in the chair, and the oration called for, but Brother Kent, not having had sufficient time, we may suppose, to prepare himself since he was chosen orator, desired that it might be postponed till the next anniversary, April 24th, which was agreed to by the society. We shall then verify the old proverb by killing two birds with one stone. Having settled this business, Brother Burton was called on for his essay, which has been due almost as long as the oration. But not being prepared, it was voted after hearing his excuse, quote, that it be delivered on the evening of the Monday nearest the 15th of April, end quote. Brother Godine's being absent, his essay, of course, was not read. Brother Blood, whose essay was due at the same time with Brother Godine's, was next called on, but it appearing that by some fatal mistake he had left it in the Sterling or elsewhere, a vote was passed to hear it with Brother Burton's. Thus we dispatched business. No essay now remained to be heard except Brother Emerson's, which was not read last term on account of circumstances mentioned in page 46 of this volume. He was therefore called on to read now, and oh, how the secretary's heart beat with joy when he actually saw him arise from his seat and, taking a roll of paper from his pocket, seat himself by the table. Rejoice with me, my brethren, for we shall yet hear an essay this evening. He accordingly read a very elegant and appropriate essay, for which he received the unanimous and, let me add, the most sincere thanks of the society. All business relative to performances being thus finished, Brother Hill, second, was chosen committee of one to wait upon Brother Godine and inform him that unless he in future attend the meetings of the society more regularly than in times past, he shall be expelled. Brother Blood was likewise chosen committee of one to wait on Brother Lyon for the same purpose. And now, as my term of service has expired, I must leave it with him, Hill, the new secretary, to transmit to posterity the very interesting proceedings of this society, while I, with true firmness of mind, oh, the sweets of power, will descend to a private station. So farewell to all my greatness, Fry's occupations gone. Attested, Enoch Fry, Secretary. Wednesday, March 21st, 1821. Met at Brother Blood's, and let us look up, for the day of restoration draweth nigh. With rapture do I record the proceedings of this joyful evening. Imprimis, Brother Wood filled the chair with superior dignity, in which gravity and imposing majesty were predominant. The house was then called to order, and we were favored with a most ingenious and amusing and humorous performance by Brother Blood entitled Journal Travels, etc., and the contrary. The effect which this produced upon us was, I cannot tell how powerful, and therefore shall not attempt to describe it. It baffled description. Therefore we will drop that subject and turn to a milder atmosphere and calmer sky. Brother Emerson next advanced with a neat, concise, and pithy comparison of country and city life, much to the edification of the brotherhood. Brother Wood then obliged us with an original and no doubt very accurate description of country life, in which he drew aside the curtain, that is, opened the door, and introduced us at once into the interior of a yeoman's dwelling. We were very much pleased with the mistake which the master of the house, good easy soul, made by taking his guest at first for an ass or some other outlandish beast. But on awaking from his nap, he saw his error and gave him such a cordial reception that we were charmed with country life. Themes being dispatched, proceeded to discussion. The first, Hill; second, Solus. Godine absent, decided in his favor, of course. Then the important Dowling question was discussed by Kent and Fry, in the progress of which the former displayed an interest, an eloquence, warmth of feeling, and sensibility in defense of Patrick Dowling, a Catholic Irishman, which did equal honor to his head and heart. He even rose to the sublime in defense of this great and much injured man, interlarded with specimens of the most beautiful pathos. His feelings, indeed, were so much affected that they choked his utterance, but his expressive countenance did more for his cause than all the letters in the alphabet. Brother Fry, on the contrary, produced many knock-down arguments, which had a manifest tendency to disprove all his opponent had advanced. He assailed him with invectives and contradictions in abundance, displayed much sophistry, satire, humor, in his attack upon the immaculate Dowling. He would even gladly have buried him in a hole of his own digging, into which a fit of intoxication had plunged him. This being a case of peculiar importance, instead of committing the decision as usual to the two members only, the secretary formally took the opinion of all present, and notwithstanding the obstinate virulence and the position of Mr. Attorney Fry, the Patrick was cleared by a majority of one. So many intemperance triumph. Committees: Kent and Hill, second. For discussions reported the following which were accepted. 1. Whether it be beneficial to the students to spend much time in the acquisition of the polite accomplishment. Burton and Emerson. 2. A conference on the comparative interest excited by the lectures of Ware, Willard, and Everett. Blood, Cheney, and Wood. Blood and Cheney for themes reported. The miseries of human life, accepted. Voted to adjourn at the 5th of April next, to meet at Burton's at 7 o'clock p.m. April 5th, 1821. Met at Burton's. Kent and Hill II, judges of the discussion by Burton and Emerson, decided in the negative in favor of Burton. Attested by Joseph B. Hill, Secretary. May 1st, 1821. Met at Brother Blood's to hear Brother Kent's anniversary oration. Liberal provision had been made for a social conviviality, to which 2 bottles of wine, handed over by Brother Emerson, not a little contributed, and for which by a public vote the society bestowed their warmest thanks to Brother Emerson. Brother Cheney filled the chair, and after a cheerful glass the orator held forth on, and then there's an annotated interruption here that says, "Here the records of the society come to an abrupt end, excepting certain accounts and the end of the books, and the following official declaration. I, R.W. Emerson, Committee of Arrangements, have received of R.W. Emerson, Secretary, the sum of $2 for each essay meeting in the past term collected from fine and assessment, and likewise the donations made to the society on the anniversary meeting, etc., and have faithfully expended the same for the best interests of the society as far as my limited apprehension would assist me. There remains in the treasury the sum of 1 cent, being the donation of Brother Oliver Blood to the society, which I shall pay on demand of the new secretary, signed R.W. Emerson." This is the end of the first section of Ralph Waldo Emerson's journals. We will continue in the next video with Journal 3, and it is entitled Number 18, also from the year 1820. Thank you for listening.